Have you ever wondered what levers you need to pull in a multifamily property to actually add value? Well, in this video, we walk through a 10-unit multifamily building that we're evaluating, how we plug the numbers into our pro forma, how the numbers look like once it's stabilized, and how we come up with that budget for renovations on a property that does or does not make sense. Come check it out. Wanted to go through this property. I've found this property actually from doing a kind of driving for dollars campaign. So in a different video, I'll explain how we find the addresses to these properties, and set our criteria, put our list together, and then I actually go out into the field and drive around and look at these properties manually. So this one caught my eye. It's a 10-unit building. I'm going to label it 123 Pickle Street, just to kind of keep the the anonymity of it. We're still kind of going through this deal, so I don't want to throw the address out there or where it is or anything like that. But anyway, drove around, saw that this property, it looked like it was in service, but there was definitely some things that stuck out to us as far as there being a value add potential opportunity here. The first thing was, you can't see it from this photo, but one of the first things was we noticed that there were missing electric meters on the side of the house. So there was actually 10 spots for meters, and I think only 8 of them were in there. So that tells us, hey, there's probably units that are not in service in here. I see some obviously deferred maintenance on like the driveway. It looks like they're doing a little bit of work on some sewer lines, and I'll explain like once we actually got in touch with the owner, kind of what was going on there. But some things to look for, you see window units. That means that there's no HVAC typically. So that's a potential value add piece. Doesn't mean that they're not updated on the inside, but people like to have HVAC or central air units in their apartments, and they're willing to pay more if it does have it. So that's a value add lever. Just see some general upkeep stuff as far as like the driveway and walking around the property, like some landscaping stuff and the maintenance piece. So this one checked some boxes on our list, and basically what we did from here was we got in contact with the owner. We found their contact information through some of our systems that we use as well, which again is in another video if you want to search for it in our YouTube channel. And then got in contact with the owner, was just reaching out to say, hey, look, we have a group that invests in multifamily properties in the area. We're interested to see if you would have any potential in selling the property or potentially partnering on it if we don't lead with that, but that's also a potential way to handle that. So he said yes. He'd been kind of beat up on this property. They thought that they could come in. They were small mom and pop investors. They were used to doing like duplexes and triplexes and stuff like that, but thought that they could try their hand at this 10 unit. The budget was more than what they were hoping for. They didn't necessarily have the team in place. They had a lot of maintenance issues that they weren't expecting and they hadn't budgeted for. So they were pretty much fed up with it. And first thing we have to do, obviously, is get what we call either the T6 or the T12. And that is basically the trailing 6 months or the trailing 12 months of the performance of a property. So a lot of times when you see properties on the market, you'll get pro forma numbers. Those are like the pretty numbers that the brokers will put out there that shows the potential of the property. But what we want to do when we analyze a property, especially up front, is to look at that T6, T12, and get the actual numbers of the property. We need to know what it's doing right now, not what it can potentially do. We're going to put that in later, but what we need to do is figure out where the property is performing now and run our numbers based on that. So this is the deal. So once we got those T12 numbers, we went back and input everything into our pro forma calculator. So we have a calculator in our Skool group that we use on multifamily properties, and it shows us the current value based on the metrics that we put in for the property. So came in and all the rents, go in here. We labeled everything A through J. It's a 10-unit property. labeled the unit count, the unit type, because this is information that matters when we start to do our value add or stabilized piece. And then go through our monthly budget or our monthly rents. So they gave us the rent rolls. This one was doing 1,100. This one's 10,000 or 1080, 1050. Just right off the bat, this tells me that those are under rented. We have other 2-bedroom units in the same area that are 1,450, 1,550. So there's space there to increase as long as we can show the value to the tenant. Same thing with the 1-beds. A lot of our 1-beds are renting around 800 to 950, depending on the size and the updates involved. So those are under rented as well. And obviously, we've got some vacancies in here. So we like to label these in red, just so they stand out to us. Like, okay, these are clearly empty. Obviously, 2 of those are because there's no electric meters in it. 2 of them, maybe they just aren't leased out at the moment, but they hadn't been in the last 6 months. So we got some vacancies there. And then that gives us our total income. This additional income category, there's nothing to put in right now, but this is where you could add in, pet fees, or sometimes there's storage buildings on the properties that people will rent in addition to their rent, parking spaces, things along those lines. And again, that's another value add lever that you can add in on the stabilized side. But right now we're looking at how it's performing currently. So that's your income side. And you come down here to the pro forma calculations. The expense calculations. And we add in our management fee of 10%. So that's coming off this gross income. 10% of the gross rents are covered by the management company. Vacancy in this case is already accounted for. We know what the vacancy rate is. You might be able to, if you really want to be comfortable, you could add a small vacancy percentage based on if these properties were to, for some reason, go vacant as well. But right now we're just counting the vacant units as our vacancy. In the stabilized piece, you have to account for vacancy on top of what's being rented right now. So the accounting and admin fees, $2,000 a month. Insurance about $5,000 a month, taxes about $10,000 a month. Can't do a lot about these types of fees. Obviously, when you're trying to increase NOI, you're trying to decrease the expenses as well as increase your income. So those are somewhat fixed costs. It's hard to renegotiate your taxes. You can't do much about that. You can look at insurance, see if you can get a cheaper rate, but that seems pretty in line with the market. Repairs and maintenance. Those are kind of a red flag to me. That seems like a high number. The owner expressed that they had been beaten up with repairs and maintenance. I guess they got into it not realizing how much work some of the units needed. And then really big red flag is the amount that the owner is paying in utilities. So this tells me that the tenants are not responsible for their own utilities right now, which takes a big beating on the net operating income. You can see there, between just the utilities, that's about almost $20,000. So that's a big deal whenever it comes to your net operating income. So total expenses about $51,000, almost $52,000. Rental income is at about $67,500. So your net operating income on a 10-unit property right now is less than $16,000, which is not great. Any unforeseen expense or continued vacancy or big ticket item can turn that into a losing proposition real fast. So based on a cap rate, which if you need to learn what a cap rate is, we do have another video I will link in the description here explaining the cap rate, how that works for multifamily property valuations. But based on your net operating income, a cap rate of about 7, which is average for this area, your property or that property is only worth about $223,000, $224,000 based on the income. Now, replacement value, if you were to go build this thing, clearly it's going to cost you way more than that. But we have to take what the current value is and then figure out what the stabilized value is, figure out what our budget is going to cost to get it to the stabilized point in between that, and see if there's enough value add there to really dive into this property. So some considerations that we have here. low rents, vacant units, repairs, maintenance are high. The utilities paid by owner. So those are some of the value add, levers that we can pull that we see just from the outside. Like, hey, there's, these are the things operationally that are, keeping this property from performing at its best. So now, with that said, before we get into spending all the time on budget for renovations, this is before we've even walked the units. We want to see if this deal can pencil, and then kind of back into the budget and what we're able to spend to get it from the current state to the stabilized state. So what we do now is go to the stabilized pro forma. I did a favor and filled this one out before, but I have not filled out the stabilized pro forma. So if we were to think, okay, let's get this property performing at its complete best. What are some of the things that we can do and numbers that we can provide to increase this? So we're going to go in here and we're going to say our 2-bedroom units. Let's just say, we don't do a full renovation on all of these and get them to the peak of the market rent, but we do want to raise rents. We do maybe want to add some heat pumps and make this a little bit more tenant friendly for people to move in, and they're willing to pay more for that. So let's just say our 2-bedroom units are now leasing at $1,300 a month, but we've got them all full. So we're going to do $1,300 for all of these. I don't know why that says utilities included. And then let's say we get our 1-beds, painted, cleaned up. We've got newer amenities inside of it. We've got heat pumps, things along those lines. Let's say we can get those up to 800. But again, they're all full. It's a big deal. So we're going from a gross income of $67,560 to $132,000. Pretty big jump, right? So I'm not sure why this is not populating, but 132,000 is a pretty big jump. Additional income. So one thing I noticed on this property, there were not quite enough like front parking spaces for everybody to park in the front. There were about 10 spaces, and obviously we've got 2-bedroom units. So if anybody has 2 cars, like, we are, hurting for parking spots. There is parking on the side, but it's not necessarily ideal. You have to walk a little ways. So let's say that if they want a priority spot in the front, we're going to charge an extra $25 a month for those spots, which you can see calculates into the annual over here. So if there's 10 spots, we're just going to put 1 on each of these. It could be that one unit has 2 of them that they got priority, so there's 50 on that, but that would take it away. So overall, let's say we rented out all 10. That adds, an additional $3,000 a year. Not a huge jump, but hey, it's money. So we like it. So then we come in here and we take this rental income. That shouldn't say utility. Our expenses, we need to do our management fee, which would be this times 10%. I don't know why that didn't work. Times 0.10. There we go. Vacancy, we're going to count, the lenders usually want to see between 7 to 10%, 7 being on the very low side. A lot of times they like to calculate it by 10, but I like to kind of put it in front of them that we're, right in the middle there, essentially. So we'll do 8% of the gross rents. That means that, essentially the property would be vacant for like 1 month out of the year, something along those lines. It's an average, obviously. So we're going to take $10,000 out from that. Accounting and admin should stay the same. Insurance should stay the same. Taxes are definitely going to stay the same, if not go up. Hopefully they don't go up, just based on us, doing a little bit of work and making the property more efficient. Repair should go down because, again, this is the stabilized. This is after we've done the work, which we haven't budgeted for yet, but this is in a stabilized state. So there should be less maintenance. Let's say we'll cut that in half, $4,500 a month. Trash services, might be able to charge for that. We're just going to say, hey, owners will continue to pay the trash service. APCO, which is like our electricity, like we said already, we've got electric meters there. So let's just say that's zero. Your sewer and water, we're going to have the tenants pay, and we're going to have the tenants pay their own internet bill as well. So that drops our expenses down from, what was it before? Almost 52,000 to 47,900, but we have all of our units rented. So that takes us from a NOI of 15,000 all the way up to an NOI of almost $90,000. So if you look at the cap rate in this scenario, based on a 7% cap rate, we just added $1 million worth of value, and we didn't do anything crazy. I mean, we got the units full. We made the leases more efficient by taking the owners taking the utility burden off the owners and putting it onto the tenants, which is normal. Everybody kind of expects that. And then, just kind of made the property function better, got the NOI up, got the income up, expenses down, got the NOI number to a better place, and that value increased by almost $1 million. So here's where a lot of investors get a little bit confused or sidetracked or whatever. They say, hey, if I can buy it at 250, which is probably not going to happen, do this plan, the bank's willing to give me 80% of, whatever 80% of 1.25 is. So 1.244, 285 times 0.8 is 995,000. So the goal here is to come back and get a new loan on the property. So a lot of people look at loan to value because they are used to doing this in a single family setting where the bank says we'll give you 70% loan to value or 80% loan to value or whatever it is. But that's not the way the bank does it in this scenario. So we will take that. Let's just say that we do use the 80% loan to value number. So that loan would be $995,428, and we'll say it's at the prevailing rate right now, 7.5%. That's being a little bit conservative. We could probably get a better deal for a 25-year term. And we've got a mortgage calculator on my phone that I use. So I go in and I plug in these terms. 995,428 would be our loan, 7.5% interest for 25 years. That gives us a monthly payment of $7,356. Annualized, that's $88,000. So let's do some math here. If your loan is at $88,000 and you're only making $87,000, do you think the bank is going to give you that money? Absolutely not. So we have to look at what we call a debt service coverage ratio. So the bank is expecting this DSCR coverage ratio to be between a 1.2 to a 1.3. Well, they'd love to see more. So let's just say minimum 1.2 plus. So that means for what we have coming in for income and what we have going out for debt, they want to see a ratio there of 1.2 to 1.3. So let's start playing with this number. Let's say we get to 800,000 instead of 995. That brings our payment down to 5,911. 70%. So if our annual debt service equals 70,932 and our NOI equals 87,100, then our debt service ratio basically takes that NOI and we divide it by the annual debt service. That debt service ratio turns out to be 1.22. So that's close to the bank saying, but it is good enough for them to, and don't worry about this, I'm not sure what's going on. It is good enough for them to consider doing the loan on this property. So what we do from there, and we're not going to go all the way into, budget calculations and everything, but if we say, okay, the new loan's at 800,000. The numbers work at 800,000 at 7.5% for 25 years. Now's when we go back to the owner and we say, hey, look, we see the opportunity here. We think it's going to be a great project. We do need to infuse a decent amount of capital into this to get it to this point versus what it's at right now. So, he's probably not going to take 225. I doubt he paid that much for it. I doubt he paid less than that for it. But let's say we can get it for 450. So purchase price, 450,000. Let's just say budget estimate. If we're really coming in and you're thinking 10 units, putting heat pumps in all of them, probably needing to paint them, probably getting a good, resurfacing at least of the driveway, taking care of some maintenance issues, running our marketing and everything like that. Let's just say we were going to put 300,000 into this thing. Let's say, I think we get a lot done for 250. So that gives us a total of, I could do this math, but I'm not risking it. Okay, 700. I know what the fucking math is. So total there is 700,000. So if we can expect to pay 450 for it, we either raise the money or get the money from the bank to do the 250,000. We probably have a small down payment in there, maybe on the acquisition side or on the total loan amount. And then we do this project within 8 to 12 months. We come in and we do a cash out refi at 800,000 because that's the new loan. We've verified that the numbers can work here. Hopefully we can get this number down so that we have a little bit more wiggle room with what the final loan is. But if we do a cash out refi at 800, we get the money that we've put in back out. Plus there's $100,000 that we can either pocket as tax-free because it's a loan coming back to us, basically doing a burr, or we can leave it in the account or use it for additional upgrades in the property, or a rainy day fund, or other kind of stuff down the road for value add components and stuff like that. So this is how we look at, okay, does this pencil at all? So we start here, we get our building requirements and what it actually is performing at right now. We go into the stabilized, what we're projecting we can get for rents. These are still below market rents, by the way. So there's room for these to grow up, but you're running these conservatively. We see what that number is. We project our new expenses, get our new stabilized NOI, the value of that, and then run those debt service ratios, debt service coverage ratio calculations. And then we can see what our final loan could be in and around this number, and then back into our construction costs. So once you get all this and you say, hey, there's some meat on the bone here, we've got a potential project that would make sense to do our kind of multifamily burr strategy where we rinse and repeat. We put 250 in for the construction. The bank gets us a loan for 450. After everything's done, we have it stabilized. We're going to come back and cash out at 800. So we're getting our 250 back. Plus there's another $100,000 that we can figure out what to do with it. And then I can take that money and go do another project. So this is how we do it. as far as like finding value add levers that we can pull, and doing that kind of rinse and repeat method of capital, value add, refinance, rinse and repeat, go do it again. And then we obviously need to back into what the construction budget, construction numbers, how close we can get to this $250,000. You know, if the units are in pretty good shape on the inside and they just need a little bit of paint and, you know, maybe some vanities and some heat pumps in there, we feel pretty confident that we could probably do all that under $250,000. But you have to make that part of your due diligence process, and keep it in mind as you're going through and negotiating with owners. Do not buy properties based on that pro forma stabilized numbers. Buy them based on the current value. That's our plan. That's how we do it. If you guys like this, you know, obviously comment. Let me know if have any additional questions on it, any scenarios that I can help you run. You can subscribe to our YouTube channel or jump in our Skool group. We're doing deals like this all the time. We're running cohorts. We are the boots on the ground construction management and the sales side. So we do everything with Haven. Jump in, plug in. Look forward to meeting with you.